In the gearhead world, there are certain vehicles that naturally grab our attention. Things with fire and smoke. And big noises or attitude. Or speed. Will always draw a car person like a magnet.
That's awesome, man!
Because we imagine ourselves riding in or driving those vehicles. There's no question, we like unique mechanical stuff. But sitting near the top of that list is a vehicle that's so unique, it's been known to turn grown men back into children when they spot one, laughing and pointing and carrying on. And one of the main reasons is that these are rare, hard to find. You won't see them on a road because they hang out in the woods, and it leaves big, wide tracks, and it has the ability to go almost anywhere. No, I'm not talking about Bigfoot. I'm talking about the Thiokol Snowcat. With a big, boxy, tank-like appearance, the Thiokol machines utilized a different approach than most tracked vehicles. Instead of big, heavy metal tracks like a tank or a dozer, they used a flexible rubber belting to hold a series of grousers and wheel guides. This design kept weight down and strength very high, and simple trailer tires and axles supported the vehicle, and those tires rolled in angled wheel guides to keep the tracks in place. The big, wide, flexible track was so effective in snow that pretty soon every ski resort, forest service, and military group had a fleet of them to handle steep slopes in snowy conditions. Thiokol had different models like the larger Trackmaster, the mid-size Spryte, and the smaller Imp, but everybody just called them Snowcats. But running through snow was not what Thiokol originally designed these for. Running through all kinds of terrain was the goal. And the magic of the Thiokol design was that they would take the basic chassis and build different cabs and bodies on them based on what the customer needed. However, when the military said that they wanted a Spryte that was not only able to handle any terrain but could also float, the legendary Swamp Spryte was born. Now, you might be wondering, what exactly is a Swamp Spryte, and why do you call it a legend? I've never heard of one. Well, this is a Swamp Spryte. And the reason you haven't heard of them is because Thiokol did not make very many of these. And over the years, most of them have been cut up and destroyed. So at this point, there's only 3 or 4 of these known to exist, this being one of them. Now, you're wondering, where the heck did you find this thing? Well, a friend of mine hunted down the legend of a floating snowcat for 20 years until he finally found this one sitting out in the woods. Fortunately, I was able to talk him out of it. So now we are going to go through the Swamp Spryte. We're going to show you what made it unique, going to take you for a ride in it, and we're going to do some restoration work on it that you can then use on your project. You don't have to have a Swamp Spryte, but I promise you, you're going to want one of these when we're done with it. Success started early for Bruce McLaren when he sprang to prominence in 1959 by winning the United States Grand Prix at age 22. Now, this made him the youngest person to win a Grand Prix for 40 years until Fernando Alonso won in 2003. But Bruce's victories didn't stop in 1959. No, over the next few years, he continued to rack up victory after victory in both Grand Prix and Formula One racing. And people began to realize that the young driver from New Zealand wasn't just a great driver, but a great engineer as well. So in 1963, Bruce decided to branch out and start building his own cars under the McLaren name. And whether they had Bruce behind the wheel or someone else, the McLaren cars immediately became a force to be reckoned with in Grand Prix and Formula One racing. But it was the Can-Am series that McLaren and his cars really dominated. Wider and more traditional than the single-seat open-wheel style cars, the Can-Am series was perfect for a serious designer and engineer like Bruce that had a firm grasp on the mechanical aspect of racing, but also on the aerodynamics and downforce part as well. So, when the wedge-shaped McLaren M6A hit the track with its long nose and raised tail and papaya orange paint, there was nothing else like it, and it won a lot. For the 1969 season, McLaren came out with the M7C, which was powered by the Ford Cosworth engine, and it was so fast and so dominant that it won all 11 races that year. And suddenly, McLaren was the car everyone was talking about. But Bruce had a secret. He didn't want to just build race cars. He also wanted to build street cars like Ferrari and Carroll Shelby and Porsche and those sort of guys. So, in typical McLaren fashion, he took the chassis of an M6 race car and put a closed coupe body over it and called it the M6GT. The result was not only McLaren's first road car, but it also became Bruce's personal daily driver, for testing purposes, of course. Weighing in at around 1,800 pounds with a 400 horsepower V8, the M6GT had 180 mile-an-hour top speed. It could go from 0 to 60 in 4.2 seconds and go from 0 to 100 in 8 seconds. This kind of performance earned it the honor of being called the fastest production street car in 1969. So, where are all those cars? Why don't you ever see them at auctions or at shows? Well, unfortunately, this is where the story takes a little bit of a hard turn, because Bruce McLaren was killed in 1970 at age 32 while testing a new race car. And his vision to build 250 production M6 GTs died with him. So only 4 of those boys were ever built. Fortunately for us, that's not the end of the story. The M6 GT was such a cool car, it had already caught the imagination of everyone who had seen it, and its performance made it legendary. So when the 70s kit car boom hit, several companies produced kits that would give you the look of the McLaren. But without the aftermarket that we have today, most were hacked up pretty bad or bolted down onto a Volkswagen chassis. However, they weren't all bad. One of those cars made its way onto a TV show called Hardcastle and McCormick, and even though it was called the Coyote and lacked the thunder of a V8 engine, it was still cool, and millions of young car nuts dreamed of owning a car like that one day. But that was a long time ago, and owning an M6 GT was probably just a crazy dream anyway, right? I mean, the originals are worth millions, nobody makes a good replica, so what are you gonna do? Well, what I have here is a new car that's coming out from a place called Retroformance, and it's not only based on the McLaren M6 GT, but it's built to today's standards using today's performance parts. You gotta check this out. Hey, welcome back to Gearz. We're out on the road and we're looking at a vehicle that was pieced together with junkyard parts by a 95-year-old doctor with no formal automotive training. You think that's crazy? Wait till we dive into the nuts and bolts of this thing and how it's put together. The front grille is reminiscent of the 71-72 Boat Tail Riviera or the Rally Sport Camaro, but this was actually pirated out of a GMC truck. Beside the grille are pop-up headlights to give the front end the right sports car feel.
Well, I was out at the junkyard.
Okay.
And I was trying to find some headlights that would raise up. You gotta understand this, I didn't go out to buy a part from a Chrysler or whatever.
Yeah.
And these lights were in a little old car there, and they were just what I wanted. And of course, then from there, I had to manufacture all the mechanism to make them go up and down.
Yeah. The whole nose was then blended into custom-built fenders and the original Cadillac hood, using some pretty unorthodox tools. So let's talk about this metal work. I mean, you've got rolled edges and everything on these fenders, and you've got this nice thing here. Is that all metal?
This is all metal.
That's all metal work. What kind of tools did you use?
Well, basically a skill saw, a hammer,
No English wheel, no planishing hammers?
No, it didn't have anything fancy. It just plain old skill saw.
But despite the type of tools used, the fit and finish is surprisingly good, with obviously a lot of time spent on the fitting and blending of all of these parts from different cars.
This is not anything but a rope put around here and the fiberglass formed around it.
Okay.
And it makes it really rigid.
So this is metal, this is glass.
That
Okay.
metal and fiberglass.
Now is this fiberglass here as well?
That's it's fiberglass back to the door. This is all metal.
This is all metal work.
And that's all metal.
Okay.
And so this is metal, but by putting the door jamb in here, I made it automatically fit the door itself, and I'll show you how it works.
Okay, now this. What's all this about? Guys,
Well-
look at these lines. Okay, this is the kind of lines you see from a professional builder. Okay, what's the windshield out of?
The windshield is out of a Ford pickup, and it
Okay,
was,
so you got Nissan, you've got Cadillac, you've got Camaro, and now you got a Ford.
yeah.
Now, if you're looking for a top, you might as well just stop, because this was designed to be a true roadster from the start. Did you ever think about putting a top on it?
No,
Just it's a full roadster.
I never had a top on my motorcycle, and I never had a windshield wiper.
Okay.
I never put one on this car.
Okay, so no wipers. This is a full roadster.
And this thing is a real roadster.
When you go inside, the twin bucket seats allow you to sink down deep for a super low feel. And once again, you'll see a subtle resemblance to the Boattail Riviera in the shape of the dashboard. The rear of the car looks just like a classic Cadillac Eldorado. Well, almost. So what's under here? Spare tire?
The carburetor sticks up through the
Of course.
top.
When you pop the trunk,
Up,
oh
and
my gosh, that thing's heavy.
It is heavy.
You're gonna find that massive 500 cubic inch Cadillac engine and transaxle tucked underneath, making this a rear engine, rear wheel drive sports car with enough torque to slow the Earth's rotation when you stomp on it. Best of all, it's all hidden under a Continental kit. Man, talk about a sleeper. I bet this thing will smoke the tires, won't it?
It will burn them up.
Okay, so the question everybody's gonna have with your radiator up here, have you ever had trouble with it overheating?
Yes, I did at first.
Okay.
And it took a little redesign to
get
control
proper
it,
airflow.
and everything worked out fine.
All right, Doc, the engine's in the back. There's no top. What's under here?
Well, there's a whole bunch of things underneath there. This gas tank is a gas tank, but it does other things too. There's air that goes underneath there and forms a tunnel.
Okay, so
goes
that
all-
helps bring the air back to the radiator.
all the way back.
But Doc doesn't do this alone. His granddaughter, Christy, and her family are some of his biggest supporters.
Hi, hon. Welcome home. Christy has just transformed my life because I was just sitting back waiting for it to happen.
What is it like to have a 95-year-old grandfather?
Well, it's rare, and he's multi-talented, so I think it's something that I'm proud of, and I like to show off.
Okay, so you started like in your late 60s, started building this car. You're 95, you're still driving it.
Yeah.
It's all hand-built.
Yeah.
You built it with the regular tools you've got. I've looked at your toolboxes here. They're kind of worn out. So what we're going to do is we're going to give you a new toolbox. Because you, my friend, are a certified gearhead. Now,
Where'd this come from?
this just appeared out of nowhere. I don't know.
Well, I'm just blown away. Oh,
Well, I figured you could probably update your toolbox with
yeah,
this.
and you got a little tear in my eye.